So before we get started, I want to thank our amazing sponsor again, Doma. It's been wonderful to work with all of you and meet you all, so I'm really excited. So I'll pass it over to Lauren, who will give a little bit of context about what Doma does as we enter this conversation. So Lauren.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thanks so much, Anna. Yeah, so you've heard the word Doma a few times, and you even see it on the background of some of our panelists. And we're super excited to just tell you a little bit about our company. Doma in Latin stands for home and also roof. So the idea behind our whole company is to help people connect better with buying and selling and refinancing homes. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see, and I know you'll do introductions in a moment, what we are really looking at is delivering instant digital home ownership experiences. So the idea is if you've ever bought or sold or refinanced a home, you know how difficult it is. It feels like something that was invented like 100 years ago. And we know that that is just not the home buying experience that any of us want to go through. So if you go to the next slide, we were really born out of this idea that our mission is how simply can we apply technology, data science, machine intelligence, and really groundbreaking human-centric processes in order to together create this incredibly seamless, easy, fun way to buy and sell your home. And that's really what we were founded on. And so again, as I mentioned, it takes a long time to buy a home. 30 to 50 days is pretty typical. We can get it down to 7 days now, and our vision is to do it instantaneously. You can sit on your couch and use your phone and buy a car. Why can't you do that with a house? And so that is really the mission of our company. So we're excited to be here today and to meet all of you. So thanks, Anna.
I could unmute. On that note, I'm really excited to get into our topic today, which is about basically you've got the job, what's next? Because we talked in preparation for this panel, and it's very clear that there's a lot of information out there for bootcamp grads, for undergrad, all different kinds of education, and a lot about preparing for the interview. But once you get your first job or you move to a new company, how do you grow? How do you make sure that that spark and love of tech is still there to build like a very long career? So to get started, I'd love for all the panelists to share your name, title at Doma, and then a 10-second snapshot that brought you to your current position. So I think I'll pass it to Rashmi first, and then if you can nominate the next person, that would be great.
That sounds great. Thanks, Anna. My name is Rashmi Sachan. I'm an engineering director, and I manage one of the product engineering verticals at Doma. A 10-second snapshot is difficult, but I will try. I think what keeps me going is the love for technology and being able to leverage technology to make a difference in people's life and solve real world problems. I also intrinsically get very motivated when I feel that I can play a small part in helping people grow and achieve their full potential. And I'll pass it on to Gulnara.
Thank you, Rashmi. Hi, my name is Gulnara. I'm a staff software engineer here at Doma and also a tech lead. My first career was actually in finance, so I'm a self-taught engineer, but I also been a software engineer for almost a decade now, and was a short stint as engineering manager, which taught me that I actually do like technical side more, so I came back to being IC. And I'll nominate Amanda.
Thanks, Gulnara. I'm Amanda. I'm a software engineer here at Doma. I also had a previous career. I was an educator, a science educator, and I was really frustrated with all the programs that the school was giving us in order to grade students' paperwork and everything. So I learned Python, and it was really, really easy to do things like that. So that kind of catapulted me into this world of tech where I'm hoping to make things easier for other folks. And I'll pass it off to Lauren.
Thanks so much. Amanda, so my name is Lauren Zack, and I have the privilege of leading our product design team here at Doma. Before that, I've worked in many different industries, applying sort of the same principles that we just talked about around making things simpler and easier for humans. And the reason that I was so excited to join Doma is that Doma started with the mission to say, how much work can we take away from processes that machines can do faster and better, and leave the work that humans are better at. So my master's degree in engineering, even though I am in design, is in human machine systems research. And so 30 years later, it's so great to find a company that's founded on that principle, that we can take machine learning, take away work from humans that machines do better, and then optimize the work that's left for humans. And so that's my mission and why I'm here.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. So I'd like to start actually with a question for Amanda, especially as a career changer, kind of to kick us off on this topic about, really working hard and focusing on getting that first job, but then, what's next? So when you started your position, Amanda, what strategies did you employ to make an impact early on?
Yeah. So there's a couple different things that I usually meld together in order to formulate some goals for myself. One of those obviously is like my personal growth, what is important to me as an engineer, as an individual. The next one is, what are the business goals? What does my team need? How do I contribute to that? And then lastly, at both places I've worked, there's usually like a rubric, an engineering rubric, like what, how do you move up the ladder? So you want to bring those three things together to make sure that you've got something to focus on, something to look towards. And then the next part of that is, making sure you have regular check-ins, whether or not that's with somebody else or with yourself. Like, you want to just set up the cadence, talk to your manager about it every 2 weeks, set up a Slack bot reminder to update those documents, as well as socializing that, like with your peers, with your manager, keep reminding them like, hey, demos is something I'm working towards. So like, can you help me, tell me when there's something that you think would be demoable, and give me feedback afterwards. Yeah. And then, lastly on that topic, one of the things that I've recently adopted is a hype doc. That one has been really helpful. That's where I put like any positive feedback that I receive. It's a place I can go when I'm not feeling super motivated to accomplish those goals that day. And yeah, it's just it's been a really good practice to further my growth.
That's awesome. Yeah, we always tell people to work on their brag book or hype document. I like that. I like your phrase better. Did you find, just a follow-up question, because we talked a little bit while we were preparing about, metrics, and you talked a little bit about that, like 2 weeks cadence and things like that. But was there any approach that you took that made you more comfortable having these conversations? Did you find them, did it just take practice? How did you push yourself to do that early on?
A lot of it did just take practice, but it started out initially just kind of posing the question to those around me, specifically my peers, hey, what are your goals? What are you working towards? And in a remote world, that's a little bit harder to do, but just finding camaraderie, whether that's people levels above you on different teams, or people on your team working towards a more common goal. Yeah, just posing the question, trying to find common goals.
Great. Thank you. So our next question is for Lauren, and it's a nice little segue because we were talking about switching industries or working with people from many different teams at the same time. And also sometimes, in Amanda's example, going from a school to a company, it's also a lot bigger and you have to collaborate a lot more. So how would you say, if you're working on a cross-disciplinary team for the first time, how should, someone on your team, or how should our community position themselves technically, but also interpersonally on these cross-functional teams?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it really has a lot to do with sort of defining goals and then understanding kind of where your shared goals are and where there's overlap. So a lot of times we talk about the triangle of, sort of producing software. So it would be the product managers, the engineers, and the designers all working in concert to a common goal. And then within that work, you would have lots of teams who might be integral to the success. So it could be data science or product marketing or sales, customer success. And it's really understanding how all of those things play together so that your work is successful and then you're actually making everyone else successful as well. So I think that one of the common mistakes I see for people who are sort of in their first or second engineering job is, I need to write this many lines of code. I need to make sure that it compiles well. I need to make sure that my peers know what I'm doing. And that's all super important as well. But it's focusing on, as you mentioned, interpersonal, but also those overlapping goals that really make the team successful. And I love what Gulnara was saying before about trying different hats on and seeing, where you want to excel. So there's nothing wrong with being an individual contributor who is a highly valued member of a team, right? So it's not just about either leave me alone or I'm just going to work with everyone. There's that really important, intersection of those different skills.
Thank you. So when you start, I think there's also a lot of conversation about like finding a mentor. And I feel like sometimes that's not very well defined, or we can get really confused about what the difference is between finding a mentor or finding a sponsor. So this is a question for Rashmi, who I know leads a team and hires often. So Rashmi, I would love how you define mentorship, and then also what mentorship looks like in day-to-day operations on your team. And then I'd love to circle back about sponsorship to anyone else on the panel as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and oftentimes we tend to use mentorship and sponsorship synonymously. Right? From my perspective, what I feel the fundamental difference is that mentors could be your peers or someone who has done what you're aspiring to do and help you, show you the path, guide you, and to help you do things and be successful. Sponsor is one who would actually can help you get to that place. So let me give an example, right? For example, if you're aspiring to change your tech track, or if you're aspiring to get promoted, a mentor can help you understand where you currently stand and what are the few things you can be doing for you to get there. But eventually you'll need a sponsor for that to actually happen. So typically a sponsor is your boss, your manager. Your mentor can definitely advocate for you because they have worked with you for an extended period of time, and they've seen you grow and pick up the skill set that you might need for you to make that move.
Thanks. I'd like to open it up to the other panelists. If you have any great mentorship experience, or Rashmi, great mentorship experiences, or some sort of example of a time when it worked super well.
Yeah, I could go, and while other people may be thinking through an example. I've had a funny career trajectory. I've been in the software industry for pretty much all my career, but I've not had a linear growth. I started off in the software industry, did the typical, I started off as a database developer. I've done some backend development, and then I took a break because I had my daughter. I took a break, but I wanted to be close to technology. So I was also freelancing for a really long period of time. And after that, one thing led to the another, and I co-founded my company, and I had engineering for that company for about 5 years. But at the end of the 5 years, I was exhausted, both mentally and financially, and decided to come back to the corporate. But when I did decide to come back to the corporate, I kind of attributed that to be a failure, that I just couldn't take that company to a place where it was successful. And at that point, my coach, who I've been talking to for a really long time, not officially as a coach, but someone who I've kept in touch with for a really long period of time, really helped me navigate through that phase and helped me understand that the learnings I've had as part of running that company and that going back to a corporate is not necessarily regressing, that the learnings would apply anywhere you would go. So I really, really appreciate having that coach at that point to help me navigate that phase of my career.
Thank you. I would love to hear a little bit if there's anyone else kind of a time, when mentoring really worked. Is there anyone?
I guess I can. I took the idea of mentorship from my first career. When I just got into finance, I joined a very small startup bank, and I was the first analyst on a team, but I would literally reach out to the president of the bank and ask them for coffee or for lunch just to talk. I never asked them directly to be my mentors, but by scheduling meetings once in a while, they became my unofficial mentors, and that continued in my tech career the same way. I would find people who are a career level above me or even on the same level and just take them out for coffee or just virtually chat and ask all my questions. And some of those relationships grew into friendships. Some of them ended when I left the companies, but the point is I learned a lot through that process. And now I'm also mentoring as well because I learned so much from other people. So I hope I can be a good mentor as well.
Yeah, I love that both of you brought up that a mentor can be your peer. It can be like learning from each other, and that the mentor and the mentee is like both benefit. But I also liked, Rashmi, that you talked a little bit about struggles and challenges, which goes really nicely to our next question, which is for Gulnara. So like in interviewing, in product development, for everything, there's going to be ideas that fail. And we can also, I'll warn all the panelists that I'm going to probably pass this question back to you again. But first for Gulnara, when you are working on something now in your position at Doma, how do you approach setbacks and challenges? Like how can you display resilience, like that you'll work through the challenges to your manager or to your leader?
Sure. So I think the first step is taking yourself out of the equation. And what I mean by that is taking your own ego out of it, because then it helps you to look at the situation more objectively. And the second step is to look at the situation. Is it really a failure? Is it really a setback? Because I think they're awesome because they give you opportunity to pause, reassess, and of course, correct. And not to mention you learn a lot. So example, last fall, I was proposing to build this internal tool for my team that would help us solve some of the tasks that we tackled during on-call. That would be more efficient, more secure. I created TDD, I proposed to my team was on board. However, the word got out about this project and more people got interested in it. And specifically engineering leadership realized that most teams need a tool like this. However, building something like that would not be the most efficient way of using our resources. So I was asked to look at existing solutions out there and vendors that could help us solve this problem more broadly. So at first, I was a bit upset that my baby might not see the light of day. But then I realized that my idea was so good that we could potentially improve the developer experience for all the engineering, right, in the company and make it also more secure. So I researched and evaluated different vendors. I rallied up 3 different teams to build POCs with me. And at the end, we picked a vendor and now engineering teams use the tool. So I guess in summary, my point here is that what's very helpful is to have an open mind, perseverance, and also positive attitude is the best way to tackle any setback. And also your manager and leadership, they will notice that how you overcome that hurdle. Because I could have just said, okay, fine, I'm done. I'm going to walk away. We can find something else. But that was a great journey. It wasn't very easy or straightforward, but I learned a lot of different skills along the process.
Okay, I'm going to pass it back to the other panelists if there was well, Rashmi, you already answered this question, but Amanda or Lauren, any certain like challenges or setbacks that you could give as an example to work through?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about the way that I frame this kind of work. So maybe not a specific example, but just a general philosophy. For so long, people were talking about, fail fast, as an approach. And I actually have started to really reframe it to not think about it as failure. But I think that the best leaders, and again, we're talking about, leaders at really every level, have strong opinions that they're passionate about, but that they're loosely held. And so I think it's exactly what Gulnara was talking about, which is being open to what you learn, what you discover from your hypotheses, from the things that you try, and then being able to, and I don't even think of it as a pivot, but being able to evolve, to adapt, to iterate, because then I don't think of it as failure. I think of it as on the path to whatever the solution becomes. And I will give you a counterexample that's for real. I had a leader once who was very proud of the fact that they were a chameleon. And come to find out that that really just meant that no matter who they were talking to, they were agreeing with them. And so you couldn't really ever figure out where they stood, right? Like what their strong opinion was or what direction we should head in. So my advice would be, yes, fail fast, but it's actually don't be a chameleon, have strong conviction, have strong opinions, and have them be loosely held and be open to all of the new information and iteration. And I think to Gulnara's point, you'll come up with a solution that might be somewhere different than you planned, but might, even be better.
That's wonderful advice. Amanda, I see you off mute.
Yeah. I can also add on to Gulnara's point of taking your ego out of the equation. Something that's helpful for me, especially when, like, for example, at my last place of work, not here at Doma, I created a very huge incident on our production infrastructure. It affected a really big customer. I felt terrible about it, but as soon as somebody had kind of pointed out that, okay, but what if your colleague had done this? What if your manager had done this? Then that's how they're looking at you right now. It's okay. They're not it could happen to anybody. It's okay to do this because it matters how we recover and how we learn. And it's going to be a new opportunity because the next time it happens, you'll have experience in this area.
Thanks. And thank you, everyone. We see your questions in the chat. So I'm excited to go through them as well later on. So for our final question, before we move to the questions from the audience, and again, keep putting them in the chat and also the Q&A. But we're definitely, as a mostly volunteer-run organization, we're always interested in how, when you want to grow in a place of work, how can you leverage volunteering for initiatives or panels like this to grow in your career? And this is for everybody, but definitely want to I'll pass it to Lauren first.
Sure. So we have an unintended plug for exactly what I want to talk about. So if you look at Amanda's background, you'll see it says Women at Doma. A great way to volunteer in your company and to meet people outside of your department and your domain is to see if there are employee resource groups that might be targeted to different aspects of the work life that you might be interested in. It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily fit one mold, and you can always be an ally for various groups, but we have found that that's a great way for people to really connect. So I happen to also, in my other job, be the executive sponsor for our women's employee resource group, which is called Women at Doma. And Rashmi is actually one of our leaders as well. So we've just gotten a lot of really positive feedback from women across the company who are spending, some limited amount of volunteer time to connect with each other, to have really interesting discussions and to kind of improve our work life. So I would encourage people to look for that at their companies.
Yeah, I feel that, volunteering is a great way to have broader impact, right? It's a way to give back to the community, pay it forward, because you have learned so much from the community and with the people who are around you. And also, I feel that it also gives you a great sense of accomplishment, and it gives you an opportunity. I am always very fascinated to meet a lot of people from various backgrounds. They're a great source of inspiration. And like I said, it's a great opportunity to give back to the community.
Before we move on to attendee questions, Gulnara, Amanda, do you have any closing thoughts related to that, or anything you want?
Volunteering, I think you can volunteer both inside your company and outside. Outside, I had experience which helped me get my first job in tech. I co-ran a tech community group in DC with more than 1,000 members. And back when I was starting out in tech, and that, like I said, that helped me get my first job in tech. And also make a lot of friendships along the way. Inside the company, I'm volunteering for platform architecture groups. So it helps me grow career-wise because I want to go more on an architectural route. But so like you can find opportunities to volunteer in many different ways, like inside the company and outside. And I think they're always helpful. And I think you're on mute. Here we go.
Oh, oops.
I don't mind adding one more thing about volunteering within the company, just because I think, all the points that Gulnara and Rashmi made were great. I think there's also this feeling that, you have to be very senior in order to have leadership roles or, a certain number of years with a company or a certain number of years in your career. What I think is so great about volunteering is that you can very quickly get a lot more responsibility. You can get more visibility. You might be able to find other mentors that you might not have thought of, or sponsors as well. So I think it's an opportunity to grow your skills and get much more recognition and outside of your lane pretty quickly. So I think that's, again, another, I'm thinking about Amanda's hype book, which I am totally going to create one now. I'm very excited about making a hype doc. And I think that's, something that can help that grow faster than maybe, working on deadline, just on your assigned project.
I have one final note on that topic as well. I hope that's okay. Yeah, cool. Along the lines of volunteering too, it doesn't necessarily have to be like the leadership position of an ERG that's forming on your like company scale. It can also be like, oh, I want to write an onboarding doc because we have new engineers starting next week. Or like, hey, this process was really confusing for me. Let me like record a tutorial on like how to debug it next time. If those things are something that is exciting to you, then I think those are definitely things to take on. And especially in an organization that offers volunteering opportunities, that's something that's going to be valued. And in addition, for like people who came from a different career, that's an opportunity to like to utilize those skills to show that that past experience is worthwhile in this new field as well.
Can I add one more line to this?
Please. I was just going to compliment Amanda on that amazing answer. Please, Rashmi.
Yeah, I loved what Amanda said, right? Because sometimes we do tend to think of volunteering as something you need to have a lot of experience in that, and that you're going to be leading and things like that. And what she brought up in simple things like keeping the onboarding document, putting your 2 cents into it if you're newly onboarded, and this ties also directly to that other question Amanda was answering earlier. This is impact, right? I mean, how can you make an impact when you start a new career? This is all making an impact. In impact, not necessarily only by writing code, but there are many other ways where you can bring that impact.
Great. So we've gotten a bunch of lovely questions. We have a wonderful audience today. Please, I encourage you to keep sending questions or themes. Some people just wrote some themes. That also works. We can formulate a question from there. But I have actually a question for Lauren first. Everyone really liked the phrase "strong convictions loosely held." So I was wondering if you had any advice, if someone self-identifies as that chameleon, like how can you pivot from that? How can you stop, take stock and kind of move towards what you were describing?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think because, you have to have some degree of self-awareness, right, to realize that, or, if you find yourself, coming down on different sides of an issue, depending on who you're talking to. So finding that ability to kind of, check yourself in terms of your communications, whether it's written or even just nodding in a meeting, you find yourself just kind of agreeing with the person and the next meeting kind of agreeing with something different. So I think it's kind of that. And then I think the other side is, really pushing yourself to have strong opinions. And, I know this is our group is Women Who Code. And this is something that, women typically struggle with. We didn't talk about imposter syndrome at all yet, but it always comes up. And so the idea that you have a very valid point of view, even if you don't have the data behind it yet, or even if it's just a hypothesis and you need to test it out. And to Gulnara's point, it might fail, it might not be the single answer, but having that courage, I think, is another way to do it.
We got a quick follow-up that about that, which I would like to pose to the entire group, but of course, Lauren, feel free to continue. I think it could also be, we have a very global organization. So I think there's also kind of the issue of many people like joining an American work culture for the first time. And so, yeah, is it ever okay to be a chameleon when you're exploring? Like, how do you know kind of when that moment is? And I'll pass that to other people as well. Yeah. Is it? Yeah.
Go ahead, Rashmi, you're dying to answer this.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think, right? It seems to be a tricky
hard question.
Because I'm definitely been in that place, right? I've lived in India all my life, and I moved here, when I started my career. I don't know. Let's say that's a tricky question. I think as long as you're learning from it, and you're kind of, maybe able to get better at some point, and you're aware, maybe you're self-aware that this is how you are being perceived, and you take some learnings from there and get better at it.
I also want to take the time to plug what Amanda was saying about like redefining leadership opportunities, not maybe the traditional ones. So like you can practice in a safe space, like, for example, the chat at a Women Who Code event, like disagreeing respectfully or sharing your opinions. There's a lot of different places to practice that. Absolutely. Just to touch, we definitely got a lot of questions. Lauren, you were correct. We didn't talk about imposter syndrome in our part, but definitely kind of it's come up a little bit in the questions, and at a lot of our events, we talk a lot about diversity on the team, not only in gender, but also age is a very common question. So I think people would love to know kind of where you see the tech industry going in terms of diversifying in that way.
Was that for Lauren?
No,
it's for everyone. It's for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the tech industry. I can take that to start with. I've been in the tech industry for a little over 20 years, and I definitely see that companies now are much more intentional about bringing diversity and inclusion in the company, and for the right reasons, right? We are building products which a diverse community is using. So if you don't have the people building it coming from a diverse background, then you're not really building it for the right kind of audience. There is still a lot more work to do. We all know that it is not easy to hire diverse candidates and retain diverse candidates, and that's where the ERGs which we have in the companies, other affinity groups we have in the companies, Women's Who Code, which you guys are doing. There are so many other mentorship programs and other programs lean into all of those things, and and we need all of us to step forward and lean into each other's and help build a diverse workplace.
That was great. So now I have a question for Gulnara, actually. When you talked, and this could be a whole other presentation, but it's absolutely a very popular topic at our conferences, at our events, kind of like the choice between IC, individual contributor, and manager. So you don't have to get too into that, but we can start out with you. I guess you can if you could share a little bit what attracted you to engineering management at first, and then I'd like to pass it to the other panelists who are managers.
Sure. So I guess that was my previous job. I joined them as IC, and I played in my head as the idea that maybe one day I would like to try to be a manager and see what it's like. Because it's always this battle in your head. Should you pursue this track? Because it's always parallel, right? This is the point where you have to make a decision. Are you going to go on the people management track, or you stay on the technical? And you can have leadership in both. And sometimes people forget that you can have a lot of leadership opportunities on a technical side, as well as different leadership opportunities on the people management side. And I had a lot of champions in my previous job. My director of engineering, my manager, they were like, Gulnara, you have amazing skills for management. How about you try it? And it was a lot of thinking about it. I decided, I did it. And it was a great experience. I led a team of 5, I think, engineers for almost a year. But what I realized is that there are a lot of reasons why I just decided to leave and not pursue management after this. And I don't know if I will ever come back to it. I did have a very intense burnout, but I think the main reason is why I decided to become an IC again is because I just enjoy it so much more. I love solving technical problems more than people problems. So there is a lot of different things but the best part is that now I know what managers deal with and what they have to tackle. So I have a little more compassion for managers being in their shoes. But the instant gratification of being an engineer, where you get this instant satisfaction of your work the minute you merge your PR, or like you see your idea being executed. With people management, it's much slower process. So it's like adjusting your perspective, like how you want to feel satisfaction from your work. So yeah, I hope I answered the question.
That was wonderful. You brought something up that I think is really interesting because someone said, oh, you have the skills to be a manager. So what is that for our panelists? We can start with you, Amanda, even if that's not your current role, but what kind of skills do you like to see in a manager? Because I think that also can help people when they get to a new role, kind of identifying the manager that works best for them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not quite at that point where I have to make that decision of manager or individual contributor, but it's definitely something that's on my mind. And so, yeah, I've been trying to process that myself of like, okay, if I do want to go that way, what are some of the things that I'm trying to reach for or work on or grow towards? And I guess probably the first one is just being a person that's easy to talk to, because a lot of the times you might have hard conversations with your manager. And so you want to feel like they're creating a safe space for those kinds of things. And then also following through on any of those things that you have to bring to them. And that goes with all the positive conversations you're going to have with your manager as well, right? You want them to be your cheerleader to everybody else in the organization, and you want them to check in on things that are important to you. So your goals document, or your personal life, just kind of having insight into you as an individual, as a human, and also as an engineer or a contributor.
I love that. I think that one of the other interesting things that came out of what Gulnara was saying was that, that you can change your mind depending on where your headspace is at the time. And so I love the phrase, I wrote it down, Gulnara, satisfaction from your work. And so I think that, there are different times in your career where you may get satisfaction from different types of work, whether it's IC versus management, whether it's large team leadership versus small teams, or interdisciplinary teams versus a very focused team. So I love that, our industry, I think, Anna, you asked this about how's the industry really kind of evolved. And that's something I've definitely seen across my career. I started, as a newbie out of grad school at IBM, and there was just one track, right? And so everybody knew exactly how many years you had to put in before you got the next promotion. And it was just extremely linear. And now I feel that we have so much flexibility. All of us came from different backgrounds and different careers and different industries, right, before we landed where we are today. So I think that that is something that especially does actually help women, in terms of work-life balance and feeling that there's not just one solution. It helps everyone, of course, but I think that it speaks to our community, very strongly. So I'll just share from my own career. You noticed when I introduced myself, I didn't tell you my level, because for me, I don't have a lot of identification with level. So I happen to be a vice president, but I have been a senior vice president at other companies. I happen to have a small team here at Doma. I had a very large team when I led a big team at PlayStation. And so I think it's not, have you gone backwards or forwards, but it's just sort of what's bringing you satisfaction today. So I love that focus, Gulnara, that you put on there.
Yeah, and then it's okay to change your mind. That's what I really wanted to highlight. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to not know right now. We got a question in the Q&A that I think is super interesting. And it's about impact. And so this person says, I found sometimes that while my interpersonal contributions to a team, so what Amanda was talking about, onboarding docs, advocating for process changes, they are appreciated, but I struggle to have a similar impact at a technical level. So when you enter a new role, what is a good way to navigate the feeling like I'm technically behind other people? And I see Gulnara, you nodding your head. So does that mean you have that sparked something in you?
I just remembered when I first joined tech and that feeling where, yeah, definitely resonates with me. And what I did is totally selfishly, I kind of attached myself to a very senior engineer who was very brilliant and who was willing to pair with me and help me get up to speed much faster. You can, and you're not always can find that person, maybe in your company, maybe your team is much smaller, or maybe some people are not so willing to pair. So looking outside of your company, maybe you can find some friends who are engineers in different companies and they can pair with you on some tasks during the week, on the weekends, just to bring you up to speed faster. But yes, I think those pairing sessions, understanding how this person approaches the problem, how they break into pieces, how they solve it, that helped me a lot back then.
Is there anyone else about feeling, it doesn't have to be technical, but feeling behind and how to deal with that feeling? Yes, Rashmi.
Yeah, mentorship comes into place. And mentorship doesn't always have to be a formal mentorship that you need to have a mentor for a long period of time. But like Gulnara said, if there is somebody who inspires you or someone who you feel that you can trust and have that conversation, just talking to them and just asking for help.
Absolutely. This is a question actually for Amanda. It's from Disha. And they're asking this is for everyone, but I'm asking Amanda because it reminds me a little bit about your hype document. How do you navigate the decision to start talking and thinking about promotion? You want to be respectful. You don't want to join and say like, okay, I'm ready. But, what's an appropriate timeline? I think the answer is going to be everyone is different, but I would love to hear people's opinions about, navigating that kind of confusing space.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, how I've navigated those conversations is I found it's really helpful to make sure that like me and whoever's making those decisions are on the same page about that. You're not going to get, in many places, you won't get promoted without like talking about it first. So like having a goal of like, okay, I'm hoping to get promoted in 6 months or in a year and a half, or whatever time frame you're on, and kind of like just starting that conversation with your manager is going to give you a lot of insight into like where you're at and where they feel you're at, and like what you need to do to get there. Because at the end of the day, like if you write down on your goals document, like I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and by the end of the year, and that's going to equal this, then like if you do those things, then like there's nothing else that will get in the way. But it is about starting those conversations, because if they don't happen, then it's very hard to like make that argument come the following year and review cycle.
Yeah, I love what Amanda said. Just one thing to add to that is 100% start that conversation, be vocal about it, because if you're not vocal about it, then your manager doesn't know that's where your heart lies and that's what you're aspiring to be, and you're not giving your manager an opportunity to help you get there. But in addition to that, one thing which I would also encourage everyone is to seek feedback. Don't wait for your manager to give you feedback. Your manager should be giving you feedback, but even otherwise, seek feedback from your peers, from your manager, so it helps you know whether you're headed in the right direction, and there's anything you need to course correct as part of that.
Thanks. So as we start to wrap up, another theme that we saw in the questions, which I thought was really interesting, because there's always questions about technically behind, but I feel like in our audience today, we do have a lot of engineers that are asking about the interpersonal skills and the communication skills. So is there anything that people can do to kind of really focus on improving their communication skills right along with their technical skills?
Volunteer, join ERGs, go put yourself, it's a safe space. The best places in the company, the people you already know, the people you're working with, leverage that, right? I mean, go in front of people, talk about it, and go and seek feedback again to say, hey, I'm trying to improve this. How did I do here? What can I be doing to improve? And you'll be surprised that there'll be many, many people who will be willing to give you that feedback and help you through the process.
That's great. I think also don't be afraid of education in whatever form, whether it's podcasts or I'm looking at my bookshelf that's to the right of me here, and I've got books about radical candor and crucial conversations. And, I'm a pretty good communicator, and I'm always learning about different ways to communicate. So I think that there's, just recognizing that that's a skill you want to improve, and go about it like you would improve any other skill. As Rashmi said, leverage the people in your company for sure. But then don't be afraid to say, hey, what's our learning and development budget? I'd love to go take a 3-day seminar on improving my communication skills. I think it's a very smart investment.
I wanted to come back to a previous question, Anna, if that's okay. We were talking about shifting career from IC to management. At Doma, we have something called as a TLM path, which is basically training in leadership and management. So if your company has something like that, also leverage that, because that's a great place for you. In your mind, you might know that's the path you want to take, but this is a great place to go and experience it for a period of time to see if that's really, excites you and that's really the path you want to continue.
Yeah. So we are coming to a close now, but I wanted to give our panelists kind of the last chance, like, what do you want people leaving this session? It could be one word, it could be a single piece of advice, but what's something that you want people to take away from in this session? But before I do that, I want to answer a question really quickly. I saw someone asked, what does +1 mean? And that's like total tech industry. I'm sorry, I apologize for our gatekeeping. It means just that. If you put +1, it means you agree with them. But also panelists, what does +1 mean? But yeah, anything you want people to take away from this session as we close up.
Yeah, I love the one word challenge. So I'll go first. My one word would be courage. Mm-hmm. Just be brave and go after what you're interested in doing. So courage.
I think I want to kind of circle back real quick to when people are asking about the communication and coming to American culture. I have an accent. So I think especially American culture is very different from other cultures, and work cultures are also very different. So I think what helped me is observing, finding the leaders that you like, how they communicate, and emulate them until you figure out your own candor, as long as you're also staying true and honest to yourself. So you're not changing yourself, but you're finding this balance of like, okay, I can fit in this culture, but I also am speaking from my heart and staying true to myself. So finding that balance, of course, is hard, but it's workable. So observing, I guess, might be helpful.
Yeah, I would say lean in. Lean into each other and help each other out.
And Amanda, our final closing us today.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to Rashmi, is just find your people. Like you're going to find them within your company, outside of your company, but find your people that you can have these type of discussions with. Like, I want a promotion. How do I do that? I want to be a manager. How do I do that? Find those resources, because they're out there. They're out there, definitely.
Well, I just want to say a final thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you also, Mike from Doma, who's been in the chat answering everybody's questions. And yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking time this afternoon to join us and to share your experience to all of our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.